Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Pod Studio. I'm Alex, and I am so happy to be here with you today in our little digital studio space. How are you doing today, Emma?
I'm doing great, Alex. I'm really excited about today's topic. It's one of those things that sounds simple on paper, but in real life, it can feel a bit scary or even awkward.
You're totally right. Today, we are talking about how to ask for help naturally. We aren't just talking about the grammar you see in a book like, "Can you help me?" We want to look at how people actually speak when they need a hand with something.
Exactly. Because let's be honest, asking for help is a huge part of life. Whether you are at work, at a grocery store, or just walking down the street, you're going to need to ask someone for a favor at some point. And for English learners, it's not just about the words, it's about the feeling and the politeness, right?
Definitely. It's about not sounding too demanding, but also not sounding too shy. So for all of you listening at home, or maybe while you're commuting or cleaning the house, just relax. We're going to dive deep into this today. We have a lot to talk about. So just listen, let the English flow, and enjoy the conversation.
Before we really get into the stories, I just want to say to our listeners, don't worry about taking notes. Just try to catch the phrases we use. We'll talk about what they mean as we go. It's all about getting comfortable with the language.
Before we start, if you want more fun English podcasts like this, hit the subscribe button right now and join our English learning family.
It really helps us grow.
So, Emma, let's start with a classic situation. Have you ever been in a situation where you really needed help, but you were too embarrassed to ask?
Oh, all the time, especially when I'm traveling. I remember being in a huge train station once. I was looking at the big board with all the times and platforms, and I was completely lost. I stood there for 10 minutes just staring. I didn't want to look like a tourist who didn't know what she was doing.
That's so common. We call that pride, I think. You want to figure it out yourself, but eventually you had to say something, right?
I did. I finally walked up to a staff member. But I didn't just say, "Help me." That sounds a bit like an emergency, like I'm in danger. Instead, I used a very common phrase. I said, "Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but I'm a bit lost."
That's perfect. Sorry to bother you is such a great way to start. It's like a soft cushion for the conversation. It tells the other person, I know you are busy and I respect your time.
Right. It makes the other person want to help you because you are being polite. When I said, "I'm a bit lost," the staff member immediately smiled and asked where I needed to go. It changed the whole energy of the moment.
You know, a bit is a magic phrase in English. We use it to make things sound smaller or less serious. Instead of saying, I am very lost and panicked, you say, I'm a bit lost. It sounds more natural, more casual.
I agree. It's like when you're at work and you have too much to do. You wouldn't usually go to your boss and say, "I have too much work." You might say, "I'm a bit overwhelmed at the moment."
Oh, overwhelmed, that's a good word. That means you feel like you have too much of something, usually work or stress, and you can't handle it all. If you tell a colleague, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, could you give me a hand with this report? They understand exactly how you feel.
Give me a hand. I love that idiom. It doesn't mean you want their physical hand, of course. It just means help me. It's very common in offices or even at home. Like, "Hey, can you give me a hand with these groceries?"
It's much more friendly than help me with these bags. Help me can sometimes sound like a command, but can you give me a hand sounds like an invitation to collaborate.
True. But let me ask you this, Alex. What if you need help from a stranger? Like maybe you can't reach something on a high shelf at the supermarket. You don't know this person at all. What do you say?
That's a great example. In that case, I usually start with a question about their ability or their willingness. I might say, I'm sorry, would you mind helping me reach that box? Or even simpler, could you do me a quick favor?
Do me a quick favor is a classic, and adding the word quick makes it sound like it won't take much of their time. People are usually happy to help if they think it will only take 5 seconds.
Exactly. Could you do me a quick favor is like a hook. It gets their attention in a nice way. And usually the person will say, sure, what do you need?
I find that in English culture, we often apologize for asking for help. It's a bit funny if you think about it. We say, "I'm sorry," before we even ask the question.
It is funny. It's like we are apologizing for existing in their space, but it works. It's just a social habit. If I'm at a cafe and I need to go to the restroom, but I have my laptop on the table, I might ask the person sitting next to me to watch it. I'd say, "I'm so sorry to ask, but would you mind keeping an eye on my things for a second?"
Keeping an eye on. That's another one our listeners should know. It just means to watch something or look after it for a short time. You aren't asking them to stare at the laptop without blinking. You just want them to make sure nobody takes it.
Right. And notice I said, "would you mind?" This is a slightly higher level of politeness than "can you?" When you say, "would you mind?" you have to remember a little grammar rule. We use the ing form after it. Would you mind helping, or would you mind watching?
That's a tricky one for many learners. Sometimes they say, "would you mind to help?" but it's always "mind helping." And the funny thing is if someone says no, it actually means, "yes, I will help you."
Oh, that is so confusing, isn't it? If someone asks, "do you mind helping me?" and I say, "no, not at all," it means I don't mind, I am happy to help you.
It's a bit of a logic puzzle. Do you mind means does it bother you? So no means it does not bother me. But in reality, most people just smile and say sure or of course to avoid the confusion.
I think that's safer. If someone asks me for help, I usually say, "yeah, no problem." It's very relaxed. No problem or no worries.
No worries is very popular, especially in Australia and the UK, but I hear it more and more in the US too. It's a very chill way to respond. It makes the person asking for help feel relaxed, like they're not a burden.
That word burden is important. A burden is something heavy that you have to carry. When we ask for help, we often feel like we are being a burden to the other person. We feel like we are giving them extra work.
Yes, and that's why we use all these polite phrases, to show that we know we are asking for their time. Actually, I had a situation last week where my car wouldn't start. I had to ask my neighbor for help. Now, I don't talk to my neighbor very often. We just say hello in the hallway.
That's a bit awkward. What did you say?
Well, I didn't want to sound too pushy. I knocked on his door and said, "Hi, I'm so sorry to bother you at home, but I was wondering if you could help me with my car. It won't start and I'm a bit stuck."
I was wondering if you could... That is such a polite, soft way to ask. It's much less direct than, "can you help me?"
Right. It's like you are thinking out loud. I was wondering. It gives the other person a chance to say no if they are really busy. It feels more like a conversation and less like a demand.
And you said you were a bit stuck. That's a great expression. You weren't literally stuck in mud, but your situation was stuck. You couldn't move forward.
Exactly. And my neighbor was actually really nice. He said, "Oh, I'm not great with cars, but let me take a look." He couldn't fix it, but he offered to call a mechanic he knows. Even if people can't do exactly what you ask, they often try to help in another way if you ask nicely.
That's a really good point. Sometimes asking for help is just the start of a solution. But let's talk about the workplace for a minute. Asking for help at work can be really stressful because you want to look like you are good at your job. You don't want your boss to think you don't know what you're doing.
I struggle with this a lot. I always feel like I should know everything. But I've learned that asking for help is actually a sign of a good worker. It's better to ask than to make a big mistake.
I totally agree. When I'm at work and I don't understand a task, I usually say something like, "could you walk me through this?" or "could you clarify this for me?"
Walk me through this. I love that. It means explain it to me step by step. It's like you are walking together on a path. It sounds very collaborative.
It does. And clarify is just a slightly more professional way to say, make it clear. If a boss gives you instructions that are confusing, you can say, "I just want to clarify the deadline. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday?" It sounds very professional.
It's much better than saying, "I don't understand you," which can sound a bit rude or like you aren't paying attention.
Definitely. Another thing I use at work is the second pair of eyes phrase. Have you heard that one?
Oh, yes. Like, "could you take a look at this email? I just need a second pair of eyes on it."
Right. It means you want someone else to check your work for mistakes. It's a very low-pressure way to ask for help. You aren't saying, "I'm bad at writing emails." You're saying, "I want to make sure this is perfect."
It makes the other person feel like an expert, too. You are asking for their opinion because you value it. Most people feel flattered when you ask for their second pair of eyes.
Speaking of work, what about when you are completely buried? We used overwhelmed earlier, but buried is another good one. Like, I'm buried in paperwork.
If I'm buried, I usually try to be very honest. I might say to a teammate, I'm really struggling to finish this by 5 o'clock. Is there any way you could take over the formatting for me?
Is there any way you could? That's another great Pod Studio phrase for today. It's very useful when you're asking for a bigger favor.
And notice I use the word struggling. To struggle means to try very hard to do something that is difficult. If you say, I'm struggling, people naturally feel empathy. They want to help because they know that feeling.
It's very human. We all struggle sometimes. Actually, I had a funny struggle recently. I bought some furniture that I had to build myself. You know, the kind with the confusing instructions and 500 tiny screws.
Oh no, those are the worst. I always end up with 3 extra screws at the end, and I don't know where they belong.
Exactly. I was halfway through building a bookshelf and I realized I had put the back on upside down. I was so frustrated. My friend was over and I didn't want to admit that I had messed it up. But eventually I just had to say, hey, I think I've made a mess of this. Can you help me figure out where I went wrong?
Made a mess of this. That's very common. It just means you made a mistake or did something poorly. It's a very casual, honest way to admit you need help.
It is. And my friend just laughed and said, I did the same thing with my desk last year. It made me feel so much better. Sometimes asking for help is a way to bond with people. It shows you aren't perfect.
That is so true. People actually like being helpful. It makes them feel good. So if you're listening and you're afraid to ask for help in English, just remember that. Most people are happy to share what they know.
Let's talk a little bit about short help, like when you just need a tiny bit of information. For example, if you're in a shop and you can't find the milk.
In that case, I wouldn't say, I'm wondering if you could walk me through the dairy section. That would be too much.
No, that would be very strange.
Instead, I usually just use, could you tell me, or do you know where, excuse me, do you know where the milk is?
Simple is often best. Do you happen to know is another nice variation. Do you happen to know if there's a pharmacy near here?
Do you happen to know makes it sound even more casual. It's like you're saying, maybe you know, maybe you don't, and either way is fine. It puts zero pressure on the other person.
I use that one all the time with strangers. It feels very natural English. It's much more common than saying, please tell me the location of the pharmacy.
Oh, definitely. That sounds like a robot or a very old textbook.
We want to avoid the robot style. Another thing that is very important when asking for help is the thank you at the end. But in English, we often say thank you in a few different ways depending on how big the help was.
That's a good point. If someone just tells me where the milk is, I just say, thanks so much, or great, thanks.
But if your neighbor helps you with your car for an hour, thanks isn't enough.
Right. Then I would say, I really appreciate it, or you're a lifesaver.
You're a lifesaver. We say that even if our life wasn't actually in danger, it just means the help was very important to us. Like if a colleague helps you finish a project just before a deadline, you can say, thank you so much, you're a lifesaver.
It's a very warm expression. Another one I like is, I owe you one.
Oh, I use that all the time. I owe you one means you did a favor for me, so in the future, I will do a favor for you. It's like a friendly promise.
It keeps the balance in the relationship. It says, I don't want to just take your help. I want to help you too.
Exactly. So we've talked about work, strangers, and friends. What about when you need help with the English language itself? Our listeners probably face this a lot.
This is so important. If you are talking to someone and they are speaking too fast or using words you don't know, you have to ask for help, and you shouldn't feel bad about it.
Never feel bad about it. Even native speakers have to ask for clarification sometimes. If I don't hear someone, I might say, sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
I didn't quite catch that. That's much more natural than I didn't hear you. It sounds like the words just flew past you and you couldn't grab them.
And if they use a word you don't know, you can say, what does that mean exactly? Or, I'm not familiar with that word.
I'm not familiar with is a very polite way to say, I don't know it. It sounds a bit more sophisticated than just, I don't know.
I also like to ask people to slow down, but in a nice way. I might say, could you say that again a bit more slowly? I'm still learning.
Most people will immediately slow down and be much more careful with their speech.
Actually, people usually appreciate it. It shows you are really trying to understand them. It's much better than just nodding your head and pretending you understand when you really don't.
I call that the dangerous nod. You just smile and say yes, but in your head you were thinking, I have no idea what is happening.
We've all done the dangerous nod, but it usually leads to problems later. It's always better to ask, "Could you explain that in a different way?" is a great phrase for that.
In a different way, that's key. Sometimes the first explanation just doesn't click. To click means to suddenly understand. If it doesn't click, you need a different explanation.
You know, Alex, I was thinking about how we started this conversation talking about being a bit lost. It reminds me of how I feel when people use slang. Sometimes I need help with that.
Slang is tough. Even for me, if I talk to someone much younger, they use words I've never heard. I have to ask for help all the time. I'll say, wait, what does that mean in this context?
In this context, that's a very useful phrase because words can mean different things in different situations. Context is the situation around the word.
Like the word hand. In the context of a clock, it's the pointer. In the context of help, it's giving hand. Asking for the context shows that you're a smart learner.
Absolutely. So let's recap some of the feelings we talked about. We have the polite opening, like, "Sorry to bother you," or "I was wondering." And then we have the reason, like, "I'm a bit overwhelmed," or "I'm a bit lost." And then the ask, like, "Could you give me a hand?" or "Would you mind helping me?"
And don't forget the closing, the thank you so much, or I really appreciate it, or I owe you one.
It's like a little sandwich. The help is in the middle, and the politeness is the bread on both sides.
I love that, the help sandwich. That should be the title of this episode.
Maybe, but really, it's just about being human. I think sometimes when we learn a language, we focus so much on being correct that we forget to be natural.
That's why we do this podcast at Pod Studio. We want to show the natural side. For example, did you notice how many times we used or like or you know?
Oh, I'm sure I used 100 times already.
But that's how people talk. If you speak perfectly without any pauses, you sound like a computer. Using you know or I mean gives you time to think. It's a way to help yourself while you speak.
That's a great point. You're asking yourself for help by taking a little pause.
Exactly. So, Emma, do you have any final stories about asking for help? Maybe something that went wrong?
Well, I remember once trying to ask for help in a different language. I was learning French at the time. I wanted to ask where the library was, but I used the wrong word and accidentally asked where the cheese shop was.
Well, both are important.
The person was very confused because there were no cheese shops nearby, but because I was smiling and being polite, they eventually figured out I was a lost student and pointed me towards the university. It just goes to show that your attitude is more important than your grammar.
I love that. If you're kind and you try, people will help you. They will meet you halfway. To meet someone halfway means to make an effort to understand or help someone who is also making an effort.
That's a perfect phrase to end on. Communication is a two-way street. You do your best to ask, and the other person does their best to help.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about asking strangers for directions, asking colleagues for help with work, and even how to handle it when you don't understand the English someone is using.
I hope our listeners feel a bit more confident now. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to ask. In fact, it's one of the best ways to learn.
It really is. Every time you ask a question, you learn something new. Not just the answer, but the way the person gives the answer. You hear their phrases, their tone, and their expressions.
So, to everyone listening at Pod Studio today, thank you for spending this time with us. We really appreciate you tuning in.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a joy to talk about this. Remember, next time you're feeling a bit stuck, don't be afraid to say, "Could you do me a quick favor?"
People are usually much nicer than we think they are.
They really are. Well, I think that's all for today's episode.
It was a long one, but a good one. I feel like we really explored the topic.
I agree. It was great chatting with you, Emma. And you, our listeners, keep practicing, keep asking questions, and don't worry about being perfect.
Exactly. Just keep being you. We'll be back soon with more conversations and more tips for your English journey.
Until then, take care and have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone.